Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Courtney Stars of Tomorrow Live. I am Courtney Carey, and today is the big day. Today is the premiere of our second concert of the Feel the Spirit series. And the second concert premieres tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on idagio.com, the place where classical music lives. And I am thrilled to introduce to you the stars of this evening's concert. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the mezzo-soprano, who Opera News has praised for her rich tone and robust low notes. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Miss Lucia Bradford. And her partner in song for this evening's concert is the fabulous tenor Edwin Cotton, who has traveled the world, wowing audiences with his beautiful timbre and those clarion high notes. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Mr. Edwin Cotton. Hey, Edwin. Hey, Lucia.
Hi.
How y'all doing?
Hi, Courtney.
You excited?
Thanks for having me. Yes.
Awesome. Lucia Bradford, Miss Diva, Miss Lady. Tell us about Lucia. Where's Lucia from and how did you get into singing spirituals? Tell us everything we want to know.
Well, first off, I would like to say hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And Courtney, thank you so much for having me and asking me to do this project because I was really excited. And then getting to work with Jim Davis and all these fabulous singers here and these guys, it's been really, really amazing. So thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Lucia Bradford. I am from Brooklyn, New York. Big up NYC. That's where I'm from. I always sang in church a lot. My parents, they're West Indian. My mom was Methodist. My dad was more in like the holiness church. So, which is, translated as sort of like Pentecostal over here. And so I grew up singing lots of hymns, always hearing hymns. I went on to LaGuardia High School, the Fame School.
You went to the Fame School.
Lifelong friendships and everything. It was a wonderful experience. But in addition to that, I learned that was where I heard and actually got to sing my first spiritual.
Okay.
And so it was so weird because it was like a little bit of gospel, but not really. And so I was really blown away. So went to LaGuardia, did that, and then went on to Westminster Choir College in Princeton, New Jersey. Undergrad there, master's there, had my undergrad in music ed. So when I left there, I wanted to like sing and do all this stuff, and then the gigs were not coming back then. So I was like, my mom was like, hello, you have a music ed degree, use it. I was like, okay. So I started teaching, but it's kind of funny. As soon as I started teaching, then things started opening up, and I, just started to do both, and it's been going very well for the past 15 years. So just singing everywhere, lots of concert work, and just everywhere, like all over the world for anyone. I have a great principal, so I'm very, very grateful to them to allow me to do stuff. So that's kind of the background and kind of where I am today.
Awesome. All right, so let's move on now, Mr. Edwin. Tell us about yourself. Where you from? Who you people?
Hi, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, by way of Trinidad and Tobago. So,
wow.
Totally Caribbean. Grew up playing the steel drum, dancing in carnivals and all that other kind of stuff. But my music journey began with the Boys Choir of Harlem. Really, I mean, when I was younger, I used to sing Patti LaBelle and Tony Braxton, all those other kind of stuff. But then Boys Choir of Harlem took me all over the world, singing and speaking different languages, and then that led to Morehouse College.
Okay.
And
Go Morehouse.
Our alma mater.
Yeah.
And then after that, I kind of just took a detour and went to Europe and was in Paris and Luxembourg and all these places singing Porgy and Bess, doing some small things. And then, life kind of went this way and that way, Las Vegas. And
hold on, you can't bypass that now. What does that mean? Las Vegas, you gotta tell us about that now. What do you mean?
I was a Las Vegas showgirl. No. I can do the moves. I can dance. I went there to do a master's degree. I didn't complete it.
Okay.
But then I moved back to New York. And after 2 years working as an usher at the Metropolitan Opera, I decided I needed to kind of do something else. So I went over to Europe. And 8 years later, I've had a career singing all kinds of different roles, from Rodolfo, Hoffmann, Tamino, throughout Germany, Italy, London, and Poland, and some other places. And so now I'm back here in America.
Okay.
COVID times, and I'm really grateful to be here and singing spirituals and to be a part of it all. And I've been really enjoying it. So.
Okay, cool. So I guess maybe before we get into any more questions, let me just sort of tell, I guess, everybody the backstory of Feel the Spirit. And I don't think I've even told you all this. So Feel the Spirit actually came up because years ago, I was a student at Mannes College of Music, right?
Yeah.
And I had gone into the library one day to get a CD. I was about to do a masterclass with Nico Castell, the late Nico Castell. It was a diction masterclass. And I needed an audio recording of as many recordings as I could get of the language that I was going to be singing, because I didn't want to mess up, because everybody knows Nico was like, he was the man. Yeah. And so I was in the line to check out to get the CD, right? And in front of me, there was someone checking out, and then the librarian and this person were engaged in a really robust conversation about a recital that was coming up. And the recital that they were talking about was Kathleen Battle's recital. And it was going to be a recital. It was she had done one the year before with Ted Taylor, who was my coach at the time, as her accompanist. And she was coming back to Carnegie Hall to do another recital, and it was a recital of spirituals. And so this is what the librarian said, with, mind you, me just standing about 1.5 feet away. Why would I pay to go and hear her sing spirituals? I'm not going to that. That was what I heard. And that stuck with me for now 15 years. And I think spirituals, for one reason or another, get a bad rap, and I can't really quite figure out why that is. Because some of the most extraordinary music that I've heard are actually spirituals, And so I sat down one day and I decided that I would put together a series that would be dedicated to the performance, study, and preservation of the Negro spiritual. And so that's how Feel the Spirit was actually born. And I don't think I ever even shared that with you all, that little story. That was how it all sort of came about. And so the idea here is that we would do not only concerts, but also a masterclass with sort of partners, where you have a pianist and a singer paired up, and a pianist and a singer adjudicator for a masterclass, so that we're learning about the style, the performance practices, and sort of more about how spirituals could be communicated. I almost said should be, but I don't want to put that on it, but could be communicated.
Right.
And then to do also 2 concerts, one of which would be a chamber music concert, because what people may not realize is that there are a lot of spirituals that are set for chamber orchestras, string groups, brass ensembles. So spirituals, sort of cross disciplines. And then the final performance of the whole series was to be a performance of my Christmas cantata, and it was going to be performed at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, New York. But then we all know what happened.
Yeah.
Corona. But it's okay, because the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council that has helped fund this series has been very generous and allowed us to all extend our projects beyond sort of the original scheme of time that we were going to be putting our projects together and putting them in front of the public. So it's been great in that sense. And I remember the day I wrote Lucia to ask if she would participate in this program. And I was nervous about it. But as soon as she responded, I was like, it was wonderful. And so, Lucia, if you could tell us a little bit about the repertoire we're going to hear from you tonight, and how you chose the songs that are going to appear on the program.
I just want to backtrack a little bit. So okay. I grew up singing gospel music. Okay, and I too am from a West Indian family. My family is Antiguan. Both sides. So I grew up, my mom was Methodist. My dad was more in the Pilgrim Holiness, which is sort of like Pentecostal.
Yeah.
So, I lots of hymns, but we kind of went to like a kind of Baptist Pentecostal church. So, I grew up singing Yolanda Adams, Karen Clark stuff, Kimber, all that kind of, music, especially in the 90s. So that was sort of my background. So when I started learning about classical music and, all of that, of course, I was like, oh my God, this is like very, straight and very. And then I heard spirituals. I heard the Jesse Norman, Kathleen Bad,
the concert at Carnegie Hall.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, what is this? It felt a little gospel-y, but it kind of felt a little rigid. I was like, oh my God, this was a whole other world. And I was like 16 years old, hearing this. And so I was like very, very intrigued with it. But I also was very nervous because I said, oh, well, you really can't approach it the same way. Because I went to sing and my teacher, Mr. Reberg, Ramon Reberg.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Reberg, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He said, no, you can't sing it like that with all them riffs. Said, oh, okay. So I was like, what do I do? Like, it was very strange to me because it felt so soulful and so, it almost like I was singing gospel music, but he made me know very early on, no, it is not the same approach. And so when we went into the room rehearsal, and it was
rehearsal room, yeah,
Courtney and we were talking about Burley's Wade in the Water. Now I did that in like college. My teacher gave it to me freshman year. It's pretty simple, right? In terms of like, it's a good first one to give a student. And so, of course, I kind of, me with my background, I kind of always wanted to do stuff. And of course, like people kind of say, well, at the end, you can sort of make it your own.
Yeah.
And take it up higher and, whatever. So I always did that. But when I worked with Jim and we were in the room, I said, I don't know. And we talked about like the approach. And then we really looked at the music and how he said it. You don't have to do stuff to it. You really just have to sing what's on the page. And I felt so terrible and ignorant. I was like, look at me. Oh, yes, I'm not ashamed of my age. I'm 40, and I'm here, now just learning. You just got to do what's on the page. You know what I mean? And it really pulled a lot, and even dynamically, how he said it in the end. But I always wanted this kind of, you want that big kind of grand ending. And then we talked about the signal songs and like what that means and why it worked, why dynamically he wrote it the way he did. I mean, to bring it down instead of this kind of big kind of blustering end, there's still another message here, So all of that was it's so simple, but also like, it just was so great to know that this is much deeper, and it's really important for us to really look deeper into the spiritual. So that's what was eye-opening for me.
So let's pause for just a minute, because you raised an interesting point that I actually later on have a question from Ms. Hairston about in Lord I'll Go. And it's sort of how much liberty do you provide your singers or people who are singing, within your composition? Because, you go to, for example, church, and you'll hear someone sing a spiritual, and it could be the most traditional of spirituals, right? And then somewhere in there, you start to hear more contemporary stuff. And I remember when we were doing Lord I'll Go, there was one moment, toward the end?
Yeah.
There was a little, I don't want to give it away because you look nervous now because the composer is on the other end.
Yeah, she's sitting there.
But there was one moment where we talked about, is it okay to do a little bit of a run here?
Yeah.
Right? And so actually this is a good point where maybe we can just sort of, before we get to you, Edwin, and your repertoire choices, maybe let's just sort of segue here and let's bring Ms. Hairston and Dr. Taylor into the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Dr. Darryl Taylor, who is the head of the African American Art Song Alliance, and also Miss Jacqueline Hairston, a fabulous composer and arranger. We are delighted to have both of you here with us this afternoon. Hey.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, Ms. Hairston, I think you might need to unmute your audio in the bottom of your screen there. And
all right.
So my question to you, before we even get into Lord, I'll Go, just sort of in terms of performance practice, is it ever okay for someone to add embellishments or interpolate things in spirituals?
You
How do
know,
you feel about that?
it always, to me, depends on their background. I always like to give singers the discretion of coming up with their own expressionisms, especially if they already have a good ear and a sense of what the training is.
Okay.
So, and I try to make that statement at the very beginning of every arrangement that I've done. To you're free to use your own discretion, tasteful discretion of the arrangement, so that it fits exactly where you're coming from. But I was very fortunate in having Dr. Taylor sing this melody to me. I think he said had been sung by his grandmother. I'll let him share that part of the story, especially of the one that I did in tribute to him. So, Darryl, would you please share that piece?
Well, so
Jackie, please call me Jackie.
Met in Oakland, and we hit off right away. We had our mutual friend Robert Sims, who
Great baritone,
connected us.
Yes, yes.
And I shared with her a spiritual that we used to sing at the conclusion of our service, which was always for the invitation to discipleship. Lord, I'll Go. And I said, I've never heard a setting of it. I've heard some people sing it a cappella, but I had never heard, and I had done a setting of my own, a choral setting of my own, but I was really interested in how she would set it. And so we were sitting in her car there at was it Denny's or some diner.
Yes.
And it has several verses, and so it says, Lord, I'll go, Lord, I'll go. If the Lord wants somebody, here am I, oh Lord, send me. Maybe motherless, Lord, I'll go. Maybe friendless, Lord, I'll go. If the Lord wants somebody. So it has many verses, and so to cut to the chase, I said, Lord, I'll go. Lord, I'll go. If the Lord wants somebody, here am I, oh Lord, send me.
Thank Dr. Taylor.
She recorded that. She recorded it and on a cassette recorder. And next thing I knew, there was this phenomenal arrangement that meant so much. It means so much to me, and has meant a lot to audiences. It has this. Jackie's arrangements have this intangible something, this je ne sais quoi that reaches across and grabs you, and it's not just showy. It's spirit. It's spirit infused, and so it goes to the truth of the setting of spirituals.
So I think now would be a great time for us to play a little bit of it. I'd like to play a little bit of Dr. Taylor singing Miss Hairston's setting of Lord, I'll Go.
Okay.
Absolutely beautiful.
Oh, I want to hear more.
It's absolutely beautiful. So, Ms. Hairston, can I ask you a couple of questions? So the first question I have is just for any of our viewers who may not know this. In addition to being a renowned composer yourself, you are related to a gentleman who is very, very important to the spiritual. Can you tell us who that is and why he's so important?
Is that Jester Hairston?
Yes, indeed.
Yes. You know, when I first met Justin, I didn't realize there was any kinship at the time. I was working on my master's at Columbia University, and he was teaching this course, and I had seen something that he had done, and it might have been Mary's Little Boy Child. And I thought, I got to meet this man because the spelling of our last name, it happens to be the same. So I walked up to him. I said, Dr. Hairston, my name is Jackie Hairston. He said, how you spell your last name? Hairston. He said, well, we got to be kin. How'd you get to be a Hairston? And I said, well, actually, I married a Hairston. He said, well, is your husband a musician? I said, no. He said, well, forget him. He said, from now on, it's you and me. So that was the start of it. And then I was still living in North Carolina, and he was in Los Angeles. And he said, well, when can you, he said, I'm going to call you a little cuz. He said, a little cuz, now when can you come out to see me and spend time with me in my house? I said, well, just the first plane I can get out of here, I'll be there. I said, give me your calendar. He said, you can come any day now. And speaking of small cassette tape recorders, and Lucia, this goes back in the time probably before you were born, when we had little cassette tape recorders. I had my little cassette tape recorder and a notepad, and I sat up. You've got to be kidding. You've got to be kidding. I sat at his feet. I sat on the floor at his feet, and he told joke after joke after joke after joke. I said, Jester, where are you getting all this from? He said, well, most of them I just make up. I said, well, Jester, you are amazing. And then he mentioned the time that he had spent in Africa and that the Africans had taught him Mali. He said, you familiar with Mali, M-A-L-I? I said, no, I'm not. He said, well, I have to give you my setting, and then you set it up in your way of nobody knows the trouble I see. Not nobody knows the trouble I've seen, not past tense, but present tense. Nobody knows the trouble I see. So I still have that in my echelon of spiritual arrangements for singers. But I have the Mali language written because I said, well, Jesse, you don't have to spell it out for me. He said, okay, little cuz, I'll do anything you want me to, because, you know, I told you from now on it's you and me. Now you can forget that other joker. I said, Jester, come. But he loved telling jokes. So he told me story after story after story. And I recorded it on that little tape recorder. And I was amazed of the clarity that remained even after I left him. And I must have been with him until he was, let's see, I think it was 2001, the year before he passed, when he said, now, little cousin, I want you to carry on the tradition. Oh, wow. I said, I'll do the very best I can.
It would seem to me that would be something that the Smithsonian would want to have.
Now, how about that?
How about
that? So maybe Dr. Taylor, you can help us make that happen.
Done and done. Let's get it done. Absolutely.
Thank you. And so I hope that answered your question, Courtney.
Yes, ma'am. So for anybody who wants to know, you can also visit a website, jesterhairston.com, right?
Of Jesters or Jesters?
Yeah, is that his website or is that yours?
You know what? It has been passed around so many times. It has gone through so many changes that now what I have to put on when people ask me, I say that my newest one is under construction.
Okay.
It's under construction right now.
Okay. Very good. Fair enough.
But her arrangements are popularly available through classical vocal reprints, and you can get.
I was actually just about to mention that with Glendower Jones. Yes.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Including L'Oreal Go, which is in a collection of spirituals that was compiled and edited by Philip Harris.
Oh wow! Okay, so when you sat down to write, not only maybe ask it a different way. Edwin, you chose a range of music in your program as well. But I think sort of unique to the program is that your music is more the traditional vein, with the exception of one arrangement, and that is Lord, I Don't Feel No Ways Tired, which is also arranged by Miss Hairston. So can you tell us why you chose that piece? Like how, because we went back and forth a little bit about repertoire. You actually sent a list and then changed from that list to something else. So how did you come to that spiritual? And then I have some questions about that piece too for Miss Hairston.
Okay, let's see. Well, I'll try to digress from Darryl's piece, which, see, most of my music.
Miss Hairston, just 1 minute, just 1 minute. I want Edwin to answer real quick and just tell us how he chose the piece.
Thank you.
Lawrence Brownlee had a concert at the beginning of this year. I think it was also, there was also a lot of spirituals in it, and I don't remember the baritone that sang it, but a baritone sang it, well-known baritone, and he sang
Reggie Smith.
And I was so moved by the piece because it's a traditional spiritual, but you feel like you're in the church. Gospel, and I knew I wanted to sing it. First of all, I spent a whole bunch of time trying to find it in the high key because all I saw was the baritone key. I was like, I can't do that. I found the high key, and I was, out of all the songs, I was convinced I wanted to sing that song because there was something special. That's it. No research. It was just I heard that song and I felt it in my spirit. I felt it in me, and I knew I needed to sing that. So that
was it. So, Ms. Hairston, my question to you about that is because, as Edwin just said, it sort of blends some styles. You get some of the traditional, like straight up legit, this is a spiritual shown up. But then it veers off into some other stuff. And so how did you blend the styles? How did you come to decide that was the road you wanted to take with the arrangement?
Well, first of all, I guess because I've had love affairs with a lot of people who were in several genres. And Lucia, you'll find this one interesting. I used to go to the church where Edwin and Walter Hawkins.
Yeah. Oh, wow, yes.
And I loved what Edwin did with music. And Edwin did something one time that was actually recorded and then performed by the Oakland, not only the Oakland Symphony Orchestra, but the Oakland Symphony Chorus. And I was so impressed. And I said, Edwin, I've got to interview you. He said, why? Why do you want to interview me? I said, I want to know what your background is. He said, the background is the church. I said, well, excuse me. I said, well, what about your training? He said, it's all in here. He pointed to the heart. It's all in here. It's all in the heart. He said, I don't have any training other than how I hear it. And I have another person in Los Angeles who can transcribe what I hear. He said, because I can't write the notes down like you. I'm not that kind of trained person.
Oh, wow.
But if I hear it, I can sing it for my singers, and I can give them the harmony parts of soprano, alto, tenor, bass. He said, because it's all in me. I have it. And I said, well, I'm so proud to know you. And so I invited him to come to my class. I was teaching at Merritt College. And I said, would you come to my class and share with my students? I said, because this is something they need to hear about it, since and I had a mixed class of white students and Black students, a few Asians. I said, but they all need to meet you and to hear you. He said, okay, I'll come. So he came with one of these schoolboy hats on his head. And I said, I like that cap you're wearing. He said, well, it's called Bad Hair Day. I said, okay, Edwin. But anyway, that was my experience with the gospel, because I thought what he did was so unlike anything I'd ever heard. And then because of my previous training, my mother had been working on her master's at Columbia University, and she found out that there was a special course at Juilliard for gifted kids. And she says, I'm going to put you in that course. And I think to this day, it's called the pre-collegiate division at the Juilliard School. So anyway, I got that training. And because right now, and Darryl, you'll find this interesting too, I'm really hooked on the pentatonic. And I've come up with a title here, and I don't want any of you to copy it yet until I I'm calling it the Pentatonic Sonic.
Okay.
And I'm going to do a lot with that, and it's going to be based primarily on the pentatonic scale, because even as Darryl was singing part of Lord, I'll Go, I can hear da 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 da, 1, 2, 3, 5, 3, 2, 1. If you were to play it on the black keys. So the influence comes from near and far. That's the best I can say right now.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And so I guess my next question, Lucia, is sort of about the traditional spiritual that you arrange yourself, right? Most people you won't know this until you see the concert tonight, which I must say starts at 7 p.m. on idagio.com. And we'll flash the link across the screen at some point throughout the broadcast so you can check it out. But there's a spiritual that you put on the program, and it will appear toward the end of the concert tonight. Sooner Will Be Done. Now, I had heard, believe it or not, the first time I ever heard Sooner Will Be Done was in the movie Imitation of Life. And it was Mahalia Jackson sang it in the big funeral scene in the movie. I'd never heard the spiritual before that. I'd not heard William Dawson's or anything like that. That was the first time I heard it. And so when you sang it in the rehearsal, it took me back to Mahalia a little bit, but it's very free, right? And so can you tell us what did you put into that arrangement? Because it's sort of juicy and spicy. What's the backstory there?
Well, the backstory really, Mahalia, she had a lot to do with it, because I heard, first of all, I love that movie, and I remember that rendition there. And then I just listened to her. I had to do Marvin Lowe. He did a spirituals concert a couple of years ago, and I don't know if he said it or he was just like, Lucia, just figure out something to do. I was like, okay, and it needs to be a cappella. And y'all know my range is a little crazy. So I said, okay, if I'm gonna have to go up the octave, I have to think about how I'm gonna start this. So I can go all the way down. You know? So I said, okay, so I can't have a pianist here. It just needs to be me, because I need it really low. So it was a little bit of Mahalia, but it's again my gospel roots. I had to, I really tapped into that, and I just love. It's such a heavy piece. But I really wanted it to be like, at the end, I wanted it to be like really kind of
dramatic,
hopeful.
So
I don't know. I'm feeling this arranger ministry. I don't know, you guys. You all are the real professionals. But I just got my feet wet just a little bit in that department. So but Mahalia, she was a big inspiration for me. And then really just the gospel stuff. So it's a lot of work. I mean, and you guys really do it. I mean, I just did it as a singer, like just putting.
Yeah. But it's great. I mean, you cover so much territory within that arrangement. Yeah. And I was so happy to hear Ms. Hairston say that, singers have some license to be creative within the medium. Because that was actually one thing that I was really, and you mentioned earlier that we talked about it. Now, I will say this, for anyone who sings an arrangement by Courtney Carey, what I put on the paper is what I want. But I will say this, Justin Austin asked the question when we did rehearsal for the first concert, right? And it was in, The Blind Man Stood on the Road and Cried. And he said, okay, can I do this one thing here? And I hadn't thought of it in that way. It actually supported the phrase before. And so there are instances where, some singer will be inspired to do something that the composer hadn't thought of, and that it can actually add to the piece. And there's, I think, just a fine line or balance there. Dr. Taylor, do you look like you want to chime in?
Yeah, but so the big question comes in, and the ambiguity comes in, where people think Black music, sacred music, okay, it must be gospel. But there was no gospel before about 1930. So anything that you're thinking about, any of the Burley spirituals, anything that's traditionally set, did not have blues inflection. Blues was verboten. Blues is an outgrowth of spirituals, but it is a secular development of spirituals in its own muck and mire. It found its fertilization and then came back to the church through Mahalia Jackson, through Thomas Dorsey, et cetera, et cetera. So that when you then have these contemporary settings, you do have viability of both dancing, but you have to recognize which is which, and which switch are you providing, and that's not to say, well, one, spirituals are inherently improvisatory. They're from they're communal and they're improvisatory. That's just part of the whole thing. That certainly one can sing a spiritual to oneself, but more natively, spirituals are sung as a community activity. If you start to sing something in church, the expectation is other people are going to sing too, and they're going to sing the version that they heard. They're going to sing the harmonies that they hear in their ear, and that then changes it in many vivid and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you connect it then to lining out a hymn and those sorts of things, lining out a hymn will never be the same in any two performances. It's inherent, it's endemic to it that when the hymn is lined out, it has a certain free flow about it, and if it doesn't have that, then suddenly you're doing something different from that. So I don't know. I mean, I struggle with that, but I very often, if someone were doing, if a student of mine were doing Margaret Bond's, He's Got the Whole World in His Hands, I really get irritated when I see the whole world in his hands and it says anonymous. I said, well, wait a minute. The slaves in the fields did not go ba da ba dee da da do ba bo be do be do be do ba 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 ba. That's original material. That's Margaret Bond's. There are some thematic themes that she puts in there where he's got the birds and the bees right in his, and there's a response that's in the thing. If you're not doing it in a certain way, then you're going to miss the supportive stuff that's in the thing. However, Margaret Bonds didn't write a high D at the end of the whole world. Many people do it, and we all have come to expect it. We come to expect it because the people that soldiered that. The first one I ever heard was Battle. I don't remember anyone before Battle putting a high D on Whole World, but everybody thereafter kind of feels like, okay, well, now
she did it, I can do it.
Right, exactly, and so it becomes part of the tradition. So would Margaret Bonds have said to Kathleen Battle, "Do not do that high D because I didn't write that high D"? Well, you didn't have Kathleen Battle's voice in your ear. Had you had it, maybe you would have, and maybe then it would have been a very different expression.
So you raise an interesting point there because, and Lucia and I talked about this in one of the rehearsals where, if it's a spiritual that says traditional spiritual, right? And if it's just the melody, then you have freedom within that sort of melody to do whatever you want to. But if it's a concert setting by Hall Johnson, by Jester Hairston, by Jackie Hairston, by whomever, then, at least how we were taught, at Morehouse was you stick to what's on the page and you don't veer from that. But now you hear more and more performances where people are adding, little riffs here and there. And there is a part of me, just, with the gray hair, so I can say, I'm old enough to be a little bit stodgy. But there is a part of me that sort of stiffens up a little bit when I hear that. It's just because you want to honor what the person wrote. I'll give you this as an example. Ms. Hairston, my community choir sang your arrangement of Fix Me Jesus, right?
Oh, okay.
And if I remember right, it was dedicated to Kathleen Battle, and I think she sang it or something. Yes.
Yes.
So I have a soprano in the choir who, beautiful soprano, Miss Davis, if you're watching, hey. And there was a moment where she was about to do a run, and I literally, I have this, my eyebrow goes that way. And I didn't want to stop the moment and the emotion that she was feeling, but my first instinct was, no, that ain't what the lady wrote. She wrote this, and you have to sing that. Mm-hmm. So I said that to say that it's good to know that there is some flexibility within the medium. Edwin, I want to talk to you about one very special composer, and I couldn't do this conversation and not talk about this particular gentleman. And all of my Morehouse classmates will know whose name I'm about to mention. Dr. Wendell Phillips Whalum, who was the second director of the Morehouse Glee Club, and a brilliant musician. I mean, absolutely brilliant musician. And you sang on the program, What Spiritual? And why did you choose that spiritual? Was it an homage to Morehouse?
I never heard the spiritual when I was at Morehouse.
So tell us what spiritual you chose.
I'm on the line right now with Dr. Darryl Taylor. Let me call you back.
Okay. God is a God.
Okay.
Nice that I sang by Wendell Whalum. Mm-hmm. I didn't hear it at Morehouse. Actually, it was this year when I was touring with the American Spirituals Ensemble. Another one of our colleagues sang it, Kenneth Overton.
Uh-huh.
And once again, I kind of go for feeling. And the way he sang it, the fervor, the beauty of the piece, the intention. It's such a strong piece. It's simple, but very powerful. Yeah. And when I listen to it, I mean, I'm supposed to be on stage with people watching me. I cried every night. It's ugly cry. And so I wiped my tears, but I felt that song. And so then I, after the tour was finished and COVID started, I would always sing that song to myself in the house and add extra notes that aren't in the piece. But when it came down to actually rehearsing it and singing it, I really stuck to the music because it's enough. You don't need to add anything there.
Okay. So I think this would be a good point just for us to hear a little bit of music from tonight's concert. So I'd like to play for you now the trailer to Feel the Spirit, the second concert featuring Lucia Bradford and Edwin Cotton. And Cody, you can take it away. And so I must give a huge shout out to Arts at Future, which is a part of the Idagio platform, and the Hampsong Foundation, because they've given us a wonderful opportunity to stream these two concerts on the platform. And I can't even tell you how all of that came about. And every time I sort of sat at my desk and read an email that came from Thomas Hampson, I actually was like, okay, is this real? Is this real life right now? So it's been just wonderful working with everyone at Idajo. And I have to also thank the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council that funded Feel the Spirit, as well as Columbia Community Service. And Ms. Hairston, you'll know Columbia Community Service because they are a part of the larger university and sort of their benefactor arm. And so they provide grants to Harlem-based, or I should say Upper Manhattan-based performing arts organizations to do programs. And they were wonderful and have been very supportive of Feel the Spirit. And I'm very happy to have had the opportunity to hopefully bring spirituals to the ears and the eyes of some folks who might not have had access to it otherwise. Ladies and gentlemen, it is just about that time. We've had a wonderful hour, and I can't thank you enough for tuning in to this wonderful conversation with Miss Jacqueline Hairston, Lucia Bradford, Dr. Darryl Taylor, Edwin Cotton, and myself. Everybody say bye.
Can I say something very quickly before you turn off?
Yes, ma'am, please do.
I went just before Jessie Norman passed. I saw, this was in San Francisco, where she was to do a concert, and I couldn't wait to go to meet her. And so I went to the concert and expecting to hear spirituals, Lucia, and I thought, oh, I can't wait to hear her sing. And when she opened her mouth, guess what she sang? No spirituals. She said, I'm going to sing everything from the Great American Songbook.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I thought that was very interesting. She did not one spiritual. Wow. She did everything from the Great American Songbook. And I thought, aha, that's very interesting. And then I wondered why she shied away from spirituals. I thought that was her forte. Mm-hmm. So I never found out. So if any of you know the answer as to why she shifted from the spiritual to the Great American Songbook.
I think that was probably just for that particular performance, because she certainly continued singing spirituals.
I know, yes. But that's why I was shocked.
And a lot of people were shocked when Kathleen Battle came back to the Met and did all spiritual.
All spiritual.
And I was on that concert, and I was like, well, maybe she'll start with an aria and then do, she really, I mean, it was so fantastic working with her. It was crazy. Like, I was like, oh my God. So it's all interesting, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Courtney, I want to add one more thing. When you mentioned your having been at Morehouse, and who was your great leader there at the time?
My director was David Morrow.
Okay, but who else worked with David Morrow? Who preceded David Morrow?
So there's lots. Wendell Whalum, U.Z. Brown Jr.
Okay, Wendell Whalum. I was so impressed when I heard his arrangement of Guide My Feet. That gave me the incentive to do my Guide My Feet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I had heard him, and I mean, I had heard his arrangement, and I thought I have to remember this because I thought Morehouse College had made great contributions to the field at the time. So I commend you for being part of that tradition.
Bless you. Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's where we will stop for this afternoon. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. And please go to idajo.com and tune into tonight's concert featuring Lucia Bradford and Edwin Cotton at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Thank you, everybody, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Cody, take it away.
Time